Hoop Heads podcast is brought to you by Head Start Basketball.
There's no doubt that I've become really close friends with a lot of the NBA scouts over the past 10 years because they're interested in what the player is really like. Very rarely do we talk about the X's and O's or how skilled they are. They can go and see that. But what they're really wanting to know is deep down what kind of player, what kind of person they are. They're going to invest millions and millions of dollars in these young kids. And, they want to make a good investment, obviously. And so they really want to know how, things about the player that maybe don't come to the surface just watching them play. The first question that is asked of me for any of these players is, number one is, do they compete? Do they really compete? Because I think the NBA scouts want to know, how when they get to the next level, can they compete, or are they just out there, just kind of going through the motions and not really caring if they win or lose at what they do.
Coach Don Showalter is a 10-time USA Basketball gold medalist while serving as head coach of the USA men's U16 and U17 national teams from 2009 through 2018. In May of 2016, he was hired as a coach director for USA Basketball's youth division. A high school coach in the state of Iowa for 42 years and a 9-time USA Basketball Developmental Coach of the Year award winner, Coach Showalter owns a perfect 62-0 record at the helm of USA Basketball's U16 and U17 teams since the inaugural U16 competition was held in 2009. He was the U.S. Olympic Committee 2012 Volunteer Coach of the Year. In addition to winning gold medals for the USA, Showalter has led 9 previous fall USA Junior National Team minicamps each October at the United States Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, Colorado, which help prepare the USA men for future competitions. Coach Showalter compiled a 601 and 346 overall record during his 42 seasons as a high school head coach, including 16 district titles and 6 state tournament appearances. Don Showalter earned the 2004 National Association of Basketball Coaches Advocacy Award. In 2009, he was honored by the National High School Athletic Coaches Association as the National Coach of the Year, and he was an Iowa Basketball Coaches Association Coach of the Year 10 different times. In addition to his high school coaching duties, Coach Showalter was selected to coach in the 1999 McDonald's High School All-American Game and the 2005 and 2012 Jordan Brand Classic All-Star Games. He has been a coach at the Nike Skills Academy and LeBron Academy and has also spoken at basketball clinics around the world. Don is the director of the Snow Valley Basketball School, one of the premier camps in the country for individual player skill development. You will not find a coach with a wider range of basketball experiences than Coach Showalter. He is a true servant leader who cares about the players he coaches, both on and off the court. Coach Showalter shares a few pages of his famous mind candy that you want to jot down as you listen to this episode. Please enjoy our conversation with Coach Don Showalter from USA Basketball. Hello and welcome to the Hoop Heads podcast. It's Mike Klinzing here with my co-host Jason Sunkel. Today we're pleased to welcome Coach Don Showalter from USA Basketball. Coach Showalter was a head coach in the state of Iowa at the high school level for 42 years. He's also currently the director of the Snow Valley Basketball School. Coach Showalter, welcome to the podcast.
My pleasure to be on. Appreciate the time, and I think it'll be a fun time on the podcast.
It definitely will. We're very excited to pick your brain and learn some of the things that you've been able to acquire over the course of your career. We want to start with something recent. This past weekend, you held the U.S. Men's National Training Minicamp out in Colorado Springs. And what exactly is the purpose of that, so people that maybe aren't as familiar with what USA Basketball does, what is the purpose of that mini camp? And then talk a little bit about what you were able to accomplish with the high school kids that were out there for the training camp.
Yeah, well, the purpose of our October mini camp is it's actually changed a little bit since the NCAA, NBA were charged with kind of revamping the whole the whole scene in summer basketball and elite basketball. But we get together the elite players in the country. This year we expanded that to 85 players from the freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior class. So we really had probably out of those 85 players, I would say at least half of them will be NBA players at some point. So we really had the best of the best in our training camp. But our purpose is twofold. I mean, first of all, we're bringing them in because we have competition next June with our U16 national team and our U19 national team. So we're looking at players for that, evaluating players for those two teams. But also, this is called a Tier 1 level where we're working with the NCAA, the NBA Players Association, as well as us, USA Basketball, to really educate the players, give them basketball, kind of an NBA type of training camp from the basketball standpoint. Also, they were given a session on life skills by the NBA, and then a health and wellness area by our trainer and several doctors here at the Olympic Training Center.
So how has that changed over the course of when you first started the training camps? How has the process changed over time? Have you added some of those pieces like the life lessons and the health and the wellness? Has that been pieces that you've added to it over the years?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, when we first started back in 2009 is when we first started the junior national teams. 2009, 10 years ago, we didn't even have a October training camp, mini camp, so to speak. We just brought kids in June before their competition and played for 6 or 7 or 8 days, and then went to the place of competition. So this has really evolved. And then about 4 years into the competition, by 2013, we decided that if we're really going to develop our younger kids, we need to see them more often. And so we added an October mini camp where we brought all the players that we were looking at for our June competition into our October training camp, and basically that was just a straight basketball training camp. And then with the new initiation of the NCAA, the whole summertime thing being revamped, the live training or the live periods being revamped for college coaches, this is one of the initiatives of the NBA, NCAA, and the NBA Players Association and us to have 4 times a year to have the top kids come in and be trained, have life skill lessons, health and wellness areas as well. So that's kind of the involvement of what our training camps are really like. And this is really the first one that we've had that dealt with all 4 classes. We felt it was hugely successful.
So you said you have about 85 kids. How do you go about identifying those 85 kids that come to camp?
Yeah, that's a great question. Something people ask us all the time because we get emails and calls all the time about kids that are really good and that need to be on the team. Well, first of all, this is kind of an evolving thing, so we may add or take away players for our next training camp in April, which is at the Final Four location. But when we get players that we think are really good, there's our junior national team director and myself. We actually go see everybody that plays in our training camp because as you know, a player might be really good in one area of the country, but overall, he's not an elite player compared to players all over the country at his age group. So we pretty much make that decision based on when we see him. We have some definite, we think that there's some definite things we look for, such as obviously got to be highly skilled, but other things we look for is attitude, how they're coached, being a great teammate, how hard they work. Those kind of things all enter into the picture of becoming an elite athlete for USA Basketball.
So when you, after you get these players and you're identifying, I'm assuming that you have. We talked to Coach Flannery from St. Ed's, who I know you know well.
Right.
When we talked to Eric about sort of the process, and he looked at, I assuming you're having a network of coaches that are first identifying, hey, this is a guy that you should come and look at. Is that sort of how the process starts, with a kind of a local network of coaches, and then that comes and gets fed into the greater system?
Yeah, I mean, there's, as everybody knows, there's so many different scouting reports, scouting services, I should say, that are out across the country, and that's their job to identify players. They rank them and all that kind of stuff. You know, we do look at those. We're not real big on rankings. We had a player on this year's team, actually two players on this year's U17 team that weren't even ranked in top 50. Davion Harmon and Romeo Weems. They both started for us. So we feel it's really important that once players are identified as being possible elite players, that we have to see them. We have to see them play on the court and identify them for our purposes. And that's maybe a little different than what a scouting service would identify them, rank them, the top 2 or top 3 in his class. So we kind of go about it a little different way than what many people think.
A question that I have, and I understand if you can't answer it, have you had the opportunity to go and watch LeBron's kid play, and if so, and you're able to comment, what do you think about him as a future potential player?
I mean, he's going to be strongly considered. He's only in 8th grade right now, but I think down the road he certainly could be at the level that we're looking at. He's a great kid too. From what I haven't really had the chance to visit with him personally, but just watching him on the court and stuff, he's really a great kid. So, I think eventually it looks like he may fit into what we want for our USA Basketball training camps.
So let's go back to the beginning of your involvement with USA Basketball. How did you first get connected with USA Basketball, and how has the way that it's conducted, how has that changed, and how has your role changed since you first got involved?
Well, I mean, that's a great question because I get asked that a lot. I coached high school basketball for 42 years to set the stage here, and in 1998, I had met a person who worked with USA Basketball, who had previously been a coach, and we worked camps together and got to be fairly good friends. And when he got the position with USA Basketball, he asked me at that time in '98 if I would be interested in coaching the Hoop Summit, which is our senior team against the top international players in the country. And so that was my first initiation to USA Basketball. And obviously, I was still teaching. I was still coaching high school basketball. So that started the whole process. And then the year later, '99, I coached the festival. We had a festival where we had 40 of the top players in the country come together, and we had kind of an Olympic event with them, north, south, east, west. They'd play each other. We'd have a gold medal game, silver, gold, silver, bronze event. So that was really the festival. And then we did that for up until 2009. The festival, we had players, LeBron James, Chris Paul, Carmelo Anthony. They all went through our system as players in our festival. So that was a huge event for us. So after I coached in the festival, then I was asked to be on the committee, much like Coach Flannery is now with us, but I was asked to be on a committee that helped pick players and coaches for that festival. And that took place until 2009. And again, I was still coaching high school basketball and being involved with that. But then 2009 was the first FIBA U16 tournament, junior national team tournament that was put together. So USA Basketball dropped their festival, didn't have the festival anymore because of the U16 tournament. And at that time, we really didn't know much about it, but they asked me to coach, and the U16 leads to the U17. So basically, the same kids are there for a two-year commitment if they want to, and we want them. So the 16s is actually a qualification tournament between North and South America. So 4 or 5 countries qualify for the World Championships. The next year is 17-year-olds, and then there's 4 zones in the world, and a certain number qualify from each zone: Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Americas. And then in 2009 and 10, it was supposed to be a 2-year, kind of just a 2-year stint for me. At that time, if you remember, Coach K came on board with the Olympic team. Billy Donovan coached the U18s and U19s. They really wanted some systematic approach to developing our kids, keeping the coaches consistent. So obviously they asked Coach K to be on for several Olympics. They asked Billy Donovan to be on for several of the U18, U19 teams, and they asked me to continue with the 09 or with the U16 and 17s. So, to make a long story short, then I continued on, and I still coached high school basketball, but coached those teams basically in the month of June, and then I just completed my 10th U17 team this past year in the World Championships, and fortunately we've been very fortunate to win 10 gold medals with our teams, and those are. I always say it never gets old to win a gold medal. So
I would think not. I would think standing up and hearing the anthem being played would be probably one of the greatest thrills that you could potentially have. What's been the most gratifying piece of being a part of the whole USA basketball experience for you? Can you point to 1 or 2 things that when you really think about what you've been able to do and what you've been able to accomplish, are there a couple things that really stand out of, wow, this has really been the most satisfying piece of being a part of this?
Well, I think the challenge is, every year you have to put a team together, and it's not just a bunch of individuals that you're making. And when you're 16 and 17, you really have to identify kids who make the best team. It's not an all-star team. It's not like the McDonald's game or the Jordan game, which I've had the opportunity to coach too. It's a completely different culture, and so. That's a challenge to put a team together, and countries are getting better and better, and they know that in order to compete, they have to go through us to win a gold medal. So that's been a challenge, but it's been such a joy to watch young kids grow, and then to see the kids I had coached now in the NBA. My first team was Bradley Beal plays for the Wizards, and Andre Drummond. Those are the 2. They signed mega contracts and everything else. They were on my first team, along with many other players who are in the NBA. And then to see guys like Jason Tatum have a great rookie year. He played for us for 2 years. A guy like Justice Winslow, who actually got cut his U16 year, and use that as motivation to make our U17 team, and he ended up starting for us and being named all tournament. Those kind of things are really at the forefront of what I think about when I think of putting teams together for USA Basketball. But also, I know you guys know Eric Flannery very well, but just the camaraderie and the really close-knit relationships we have with coaches and players, you can't. It's hard to measure that, and it's hard to describe that, because you're lifelong friends with these guys who are now in the NBA and these coaches who you have helped over the years.
So I have two questions related to that, Coach. The first one is, if you look back on your time as the head coach of the U16, U17 national team, is there a kid that came in that was unheralded, that maybe you didn't expect based on sort of what you knew going in? Somebody that really surprised you, that stood out and said, boy, we thought this guy was going to be, borderline. Maybe he wasn't going to make it. Yeah, he was invited to the camps, but when it came down to picking the actual team, you didn't think maybe he was going to make it, at least initially, and then they surprised you. Was there a surprise guy or two over those 10 years that really improved through the process of participating with USA Basketball?
Yeah, that's a good question as well, because there are kids who are really under the radar that nobody knows about, and we bring them into training camp, and all of a sudden they kind of rise to fame. A great example is Colin Sexton.
Hey.
Colin?
Yeah, we're excited about him here in Cleveland. We're excited, very excited.
Should be. We didn't even invite him for our U16 tryouts. He was way under the radar. I don't think he was even in any scouting reports. We saw him play during his sophomore year, and we really liked him and invited him for our U17 team. And one thing about Colin is he's a hooper. He loves the game, and then he didn't start for us, actually. We brought him off the bench as our sixth man, but he ended up being MVP the whole tournament for the world championship. So you're going to love him in Cleveland. He's a great kid. So that was just that may be the best example of a kid who we brought in who was just completely not even in anybody's radar.
Yeah, the one thing we've heard about him here is that he just is a tremendously hard worker. And when you hear that, as in this case as a fan of the team, but when you hear it as a basketball coach, that's one of the number one traits of a guy that your team's picked, I think that it's hard. You'd be hard pressed to find a better quality to start with when you're describing a player than somebody who's going to work hard. Because somebody who's going to get in the gym and work at their game, yeah, I mean, as you know, those are the guys that end up succeeding, especially when they have the talent behind that hard work.
Yeah, again, that's what you like is when you see players who really, really love the game. And there's a lot of good players who when I go watch them, I question whether they really love the game or not. Especially guys who are maybe are bigger, 6'10", 6'11". Are they playing because they're just big? Or are they playing because they really love the game? But when you watch Colin play, there is no doubt why he's playing. He just absolutely loves to play basketball and loves the game. And puts 100% into it. And he does it all the time.
I find it funny, the whole thing that happened at the Vegas Summer League with him doing the whole defensive stance thing with the face, and like that just that embodies what we've heard about him and how he's so in tune with the game and so like he wants to be motivated. He seems motivated and wants to work hard. And when he did that, and then the whole thing went viral, I thought it was hilarious because even LeBron, who just left the Cavs, was laughing about it and tweeting and Instagramming videos of him doing that. And I loved seeing that.
That was awesome. Yeah, that was, and that's who he is. What you see, Colin, that's who he is.
How do you identify, when you talk about being able to identify somebody who loves the game, and you go and you sit in a gym and you watch them play, a high school game, or you watch them play on in an AAU game? What is it that you're looking for in a player that you say, wow, this guy has that quality of loving the game that I'm looking for? What is it? Is there anything specific that you can point to, or is it just a general feel that you get from watching them?
Well, I think the general feel, but also, you watch a player, and if he really loves the game, he's going to make everybody else better. he's going to get everybody involved, and he loves winning. A player that's really invested in it. He loves to win, and he's going to get everybody involved in what he does. And then you watch diving on the floor after loose basketball, or taking a charge, or getting a rebound that's completely out of his area. Those are skills that are really not based on physical attributes. They're more based on just loving the game and what can I do to help my team win. And they're those kind of kids are just a pleasure to watch.
So when you get, I'm assuming that with your involvement with a lot of these top players, that you're getting calls from NBA scouts, NBA general managers to talk to you about the players that you're dealing with all the time with USA Basketball. So when those coaches and GMs call you, how much of their questioning is about the basketball side of the player, and how much is it about the intangibles that player brings, like you talked about earlier, being a good teammate, working hard, their practice habits? How much are those questions being asked about the player as opposed to just their straight basketball skills?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that I've become really close friends with a lot of the NBA scouts over the past 10 years because they're interested in what the player is really like. Very rarely do we talk about the X's and O's or how skilled they are. They can go and see that. But what they're really wanting to know is deep down what kind of player, what kind of person they are. They're going to invest millions and millions of dollars in these young kids. And, they want to make a good investment, obviously. So they really want to know how, things about the player that maybe don't come to the surface just watching them play. I would say the first question that is asked of me for any of these players is, number one is, do they compete? Do they really compete? Because I think the NBA scouts want to know, how when they get to the next level, can they compete, or are they just out there, just kind of going through the motions and not really caring if they win or lose at what they do? And so I think that's the first question that most of them really ask: do they compete? And then I think the second question is, how much do I think they love the game? Are they a kid who's going to be in the gym, getting a shot better? Or is he somebody who is going to be putting in the extra practice needed to improve his skills? And when you're a professional, those are kind of things that you have to do. So I think those are the two main questions that are asked of me when we spend 5 weeks of summer, basically 5 or 6 weeks of summer with these kids. So we have a pretty good idea what kind of person they are, as well as how good a basketball player they are.
So when you're armed with that knowledge from the level above where the kids are when you're dealing with them, how much of that then information are you relaying to the players to tell them and let them know that, hey, not only are these guys looking at your physical tools and your basketball skill set, but a huge part of what the scouts and GMs are looking for is the type of person that you are. So how much time do you spend as the head coach of those teams talking to the kids about, hey, if you want to get to the next level, it's not just about basketball. It's about being a great teammate. It's about body language. It's about work ethic. It's about those practice habits. How much time do you spend with the kids talking about those, again, intangible things that they're going to need if they want to make it to that next level?
Well, we spend a good deal of time with that. All these kids as they come up through starting at the freshmen, we've just seen this past weekend in our minicamp, starting as freshmen, all the way up through, seniors in high school, or the number one players. They're surrounded sometimes, most of the time, they're surrounded by people who only tell them what they want to hear, how good they are, how many millions of dollars they're going to make, all that kind of stuff. Nobody, first of all, their high school coach is really, I don't know if scared is the right term, but hesitant to really tell them the truth because he doesn't want them to transfer high schools.
Right.
Their traveling coach certainly isn't going to tell them anything that they don't want to hear because they want to keep them playing for their travel team. So as a result, there's very few people in their life that surround them that are going to tell them the truth. So we tell them here at USA Basketball, we're going to tell you the truth. We don't care if you switch teams. You can't switch teams from us. So we really don't care. You're playing at the highest level now. So we are very truthful with the players on what we see and how we evaluate them. So having said that, we have a team meeting every day, and we go over many things in this team meeting. How they're portrayed as individuals, what their body language looks like, what we think they need to really improve on, and many times we don't invite. A player who is really good may not make our final cut at 12. We explain to him exactly why he didn't make the cut, and sometimes they, like I said, they don't want to hear that. But we think USA Basketball probably is the one place where they get the truth spoken to them. And we had players that have played for us that come back and say, what you did is the best thing I ever had. Justice Winslow, who we cut as a U16 player, he and I are still very close. And he still says, had he not been cut as a U16 player, he would never be in the NBA today because he used that as motivation. So we're very, very honest. We're very honest with the players on not only how we evaluate them, but what we think they really need to do to improve their game.
Is there a learning curve for the kids when they come in? Because I imagine the situation that you're describing where they've got a lot of people telling them how great they are. They don't have a lot of criticism directed at their game, or they're, again, for the reasons that you stated. So when a kid comes in and for the first time, Coach Showalter tells them, hey, you need to work on X, or you're not very good at X, or you need to improve this. What's the level of receptiveness that you get initially from the majority of kids? I know it varies obviously from kid to kid, but just as a general rule, is it somewhat shocking to them when they first come in and get into that environment, or do they kind of know what's coming when they get into it?
Well, I think initially I think we have to let the players kind of figure it out themselves. First of all, they're playing with other really good players, and most of the time, I would say, if not all the time, when they step on the court, they're the best player. Now, when they come to us, when they step on the court, they're not necessarily the best player. They're one of, when we invite 35 kids in for a training camp for our U16 team, they're one of 35 really good players. So I think we give them time to kind of figure out how to play against and with other very good players. And then as time goes on, we see the frustration set in a little bit because they can't all the time. They can't do what they've done with their travel team or with their high school team. So when frustration sets in, that's where we really think that's a teachable moment. And we grab them and we really, talk to them about, here's a situation you're in right now. You can't do what you're used to doing. So, and why can't you? Well, your game isn't progressed enough because you're always accustomed to doing the same thing every time on the court. Now you're going to have to maybe use your left hand a little more. You're not going to get the basket to dunk it. So can you make an outside shot? Can you guard somebody that's quicker than you? Those type of things. So, I think every player, I think, reaches a point where they look for us to help them through those kind of situations.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that you're making, that when you're a kid and you're at your local high school, or you're again on the AAU circuit playing on a team, and you're one of the top 35, 40 players in the country. It's very rare you're getting on the court with one other player of your caliber, let alone 30 or 35 players of your same caliber. So I can imagine that that's a huge adjustment. And I'm sure from a coaching standpoint, what you just described, where you're walking them through the process of evaluating their own game, which, again, many of them, I would guess, probably have never had to evaluate it in that way, to have you and the other coaches that are part of your staff being able to walk them through that process, I would imagine is tremendously valuable for any of those players that are there, whether it's the mini camp or actually being on the 12-man roster.
Well, it is, and time and time again, kids that come back from being with us for 4 or 5 weeks, they continually tell us how much better, and their parents tell us, and their coaches tell us how much better player they are after being with us for 4 or 5 weeks, how more receptive they are to getting better, because they have actually been through some adversity for once in their life in the game of basketball. And so they're handling things a lot different and a lot better. And then when they get out, and they kind of know what to work on, because they obviously can't do the same thing against other really good players that they do against other high school teams.
So you talked a lot about the relationships that you've built with players, and you talked about the relationships you built with coaches. And when we had Eric Flannery on, I was doing some research on him, and I came across an article that talked about a drive up Pikes Peak that you and Coach Flannery made, and he didn't really want to share the. He told me I was supposed to ask you the story of driving up Pikes Peak. So I don't know if you know this story or if it's making any sense to you. If you're aware of the story of the drive up Pikes Peak.
Let me just say that Coach Eric is really a big wimp when it comes to the mountains, driving in the mountains. I'm not sure. I drove up Pikes Peak and he was with me, and he ducked his head behind the seat the whole time, so I'm not sure what he was trying to look at underneath the seat of the car, but he missed all the scenery going up. He obviously he doesn't like heights. When we were in Dubai, we went up to Dubai has the tallest
the water slide.
It has the tallest skyscraper in the world.
Oh, the skys, yeah. Is it the Abu Dhabi or whatever? Is that what it's called?
Yep.
And so we took the team up, and he was not he just wasn't real comfortable in that situation, I should say. So I think he's just a wimp about it.
Understood. Totally understandable. So talk a little bit about those relationships that you've been able to build as a part of USA Basketball, some of the coaches and people that you've been able to maybe learn from and get to develop relationships with. Are there any of those relationships or things that you've learned that have stuck out from some of the other coaches that you've had the privilege of getting a chance to work with?
Well, when you pick a coach to be an assistant, obviously they're all head coaches, and so you're not real sure on how they're going to react to being an assistant coach. We're talking coaches now, not players, but
right.
But I've had some really, just some great coaches that have been assistant coaches. The first two coaches have been Herman Hareed from Lake Clifton in Maryland, and Kevin Sutton, who's now the assistant college coach. They were fantastic. I've had guys like Coach Eric Flannery was super. He's a tremendous head coach, and he was a great assistant coach for us as well. L.J. Goolsby out of Kansas City, who runs one of the top travel teams in the country, was just an amazing assistant. We had Miles Simon. You recognize that name.
University of Arizona, yep.
Was MVP of the Final Four, and now he's actually assistant coach for the Lakers. he was my assistant for 2 years. Sharman White from Atlanta, Georgia, who was my assistant for 1 year, and then took over or went to the college assistant coaching route, and now he's back into high school. So, and probably one of my most favorite best friends is Mike Jones from DeMatha High School. I know I'm forgetting some other guys, but we really had great relationships, and a lot of them were here I think 5 of my assistant coaches were here this past weekend, helping out our mini academy. And we bring them back just because they know all the ins and outs of what we want to do and how to teach it and what we're looking for and those kind of things. So we've really had great, outstanding relationships with coaches, and it carries over, to the players too. My last 2 assistants were Scott Fitch and Stan Waterman, and both those guys were outstanding individuals as well. But it's a little bit different when you're head coach of your own program and then you're asked to be an assistant. But I give them a lot of freedom. Obviously, I want them to use their skills to help us win a gold medal, and they do that very, very well. And then from a player standpoint, there is no doubt you make great relationships with players. We'll go watch the Wizards or play, and Bradley Beal and he'll come up and give you a big hug and give my wife a big hug. She's been on every trip that we've ever had, so she develops a great relationship with the players as well. She's kind of our team mom, so we let her handle the team stuff. She keeps the boys on track and does a great job with them as well. So, but then Jason Tatum, Justice Winslow, one of my favorite all-time players that I got to know really well was Jabari Parker, who had an outstanding career at Simeon High School and went on for playing a year at Duke, and now he's with the Chicago Bulls. So those kind of things you never, and you forget they're professional athletes, but you really kind of forget that they're just neat kids. They're just great kids that are very, very ordinary, other than the fact that they're really good basketball players.
So could you have imagined when you first started with USA Basketball, back in the late 90s, could you have imagined kind of getting that it would ever get to the point where it is now in terms of you being able to build a relationship with guys that eventually become NBA players and all the great coaches that you've had a chance to meet and interact with? When you first started, did you envision the direction that USA Basketball was headed at that time, kind of going in the trajectory that it did, or were you kind of thinking, hey, this could be something interesting and I'm not sure where it's going to lead?
Yeah, I think it's with any job, for any of us that start, you have no way of knowing that. And I always tell young coaches, I speak a lot at clinics and to young coaches who are just getting in the coaching business, but they want to know, how can they get to where I am, or how can they get, to be coaching at a higher level and all that. Well, my first response is, you better do a great job of where you're at. I mean, if you're a 6th grade coach, then you better do the best job of being a 6th grade coach as you can, because you're not going to get another opportunity if you're not coaching that 6th grade team as well as you can. And so I think sometimes young coaches today want to bypass. They want to get to point from A to B without going through all that stuff in between, like we had to when we were coming up through the ranks. And it's the same with any job. Do a great job where you're at, and then I think you stand out to people. And so that's the first thing I tell young coaches in today's game. And then secondly, you talk about how you envision things working out. I always say that you really, as a coach or as any person in a profession, it's hard. You don't really, you try and connect the dots to what you think should happen ahead of where you're going, but you really can't do that. because there's so many things that affect that direction of where you're going. And then you look back and you connect the dots behind you. Yeah, here's what I did to help me out professionally when I did this or this or this. So you're connecting dots behind you. You can see what you did that got you where you are. And I'll give you a great example. As I worked right out of college, I wrote a letter to John Wooden, who was, as you guys know, coached at UCLA for many years, won 10 national championships. And I thought to myself, if I'm really going to be a good coach, I want to try and figure out who I want to learn from. So I wrote a handwritten note to John Wooden and asked him to work his camp. He wrote a letter back to me, which I still have, thanking me and said he was filled for that year, but he would keep my name on the list. And as we all think, yeah, okay, that's good. I'll never hear from that again. Well, a couple of weeks before camp started, the director called me and wanted to know if I wanted to come out and work camp because they had a late edition or a late coach that had a late edition that couldn't work. So I said, yeah, I'm out there. And so I worked his camp for about 20 years. And I think had I not done that as a young coach, I'm not sure I would have been where I'm at today, just because that one letter I wrote. So, taking initiative, all those kind of things, I think really are something that you look back on. Yeah, those are something that I did that helped me get where I am today.
I think there's a great lesson there. I think there's two lessons. One, to me, I hear you saying that if you're a young coach and you're trying to just get into the business, that hard work, there's no substitute for hard work. If you're not going to, if you're not going to put in the time and put in the effort and be the best coach that you can possibly be at the level where you are now, you're going to have trouble, having success. And then number two is you kind of got to be willing to go above and beyond, which you did by writing the letter. There probably weren't very many people who took the time to handwrite a letter to John Wooden. A lot of people look at him, I'm sure, and we're like, boy, he's never going to respond to me. He's never going to probably even see the letter. And the fact that you were willing to take that time to be able to do that is what made you stand out. And I know that's one of the lessons that, for myself as a coach and as a parent, that I try to get across, and as a teacher, that I try to get across to the people that I'm charged with instructing, is that if you go above and beyond and you do just a little bit more, you're gonna stand out, and it's gonna give you opportunities. And again, none of us know what those opportunities are necessarily gonna be, but I know that those opportunities, whatever they are, don't come to the people who don't do the things that you just described.
Yep. And then I'll piggyback a little bit on that because of me working Coach Wooden's camp, and it's kind of funny because he was very much a family man, as you may know, but I got to take my family out with me, and my kids grew up calling Coach Wooden, Grandpa.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so they have a fun relationship with him as well. So during that whole process, while I went out I was at Cal Lutheran College. We had he had several different places, but out there I kept asking coaches, all right, what's another really good camp to work? Well, obviously Snow Valley came up with coaches, and so that's how I got involved with Snow Valley. So had I not done that one little letter deal and worked Wooden's camps, I would not have any relationship with Herb Livesey, who was running and directing Snow Valley at the time.
Yeah, and it's amazing. So now you've taken that happened, 35, 40 years ago, and parlayed that into something that you're still enjoying and doing today. So I'm going to jump to that in a second, but I want to go backwards for a second and talk a little bit about how you got into coaching in the first place. Was there a moment in your life where you said, wow, I really want to be a basketball coach? Or was it something that you kind of fell into? Or what was the process for you to get involved with coaching?
I think from when I was just a young kid, I love sports. I love baseball. I love basketball. Was my really, that was sport where I really enjoyed. But I knew that I was going to stay involved in the game, and my mom kept telling me as really a young kid, and really a lot of my teachers thought that I was going to be a coach. I mean, I don't know if that was personality wise, or
right.
I was bossy or whatever. but I think I can remember like back when I was in 6th grade, and people would ask me. I remember I had to write a journal on what I was going to be, and it was going to be a coach. So I think I don't think there was ever any doubt that I was going to end up being a coach, and I didn't really care what level. And I think too many of us get caught up in the fact that if we don't coach at a D1 school, or I'm going to go right to being an assistant and a head coach. If you really enjoy coaching, probably the best places to coach is youth basketball, high school basketball, and that's really the basis for coaching. If you really want to coach, if you want to, a lot of times you get into the other parts of basketball, such as, you don't really get on the floor stuff when you get into the college level very much, depending on where you're at. But I think it was just, I loved playing the game. I played in high school, played in college, was fairly good at it in high school. We made the state tournament, and I was selected an all-state team, and just parlayed that into. And I played for 2 really good, outstanding coaches. My high school coach was phenomenal, well ahead of his time with his pressure defense and fast break offense. And then I played for a Hall of Fame coach at Wartburg College, which is a Division III school in Waverly, Iowa, and he was a phenomenal coach as well. So, I had really good people to mentor me as I pursued coaching. And then I coached 42 years. The first 2 years was not very successful, but it was at a school that hadn't won a game in 36 games. They were all in 36. We managed to win a few first year, won more the second year, and then I went to another school for 8 years, had really good success there, and then I went back to my alma mater, high school, for 28 years, and then actually had retired from being an athletic director there, and then I took a job for my last 4 years of coaching at a very diverse school in Iowa City. So that's kind of my 42 years of coaching at that level, and I look back on it, it certainly went fast.
So if you look back on the totality of your high school coaching career, how would you say that you changed over that time period from when you first started to when you finished? Or do you feel like you were, at least in terms of the way you went about things, obviously you learned and grew as a coach, but what were some things that maybe you learned through the process that changed in your coaching style?
Well, I think as a high school coach, you always have to evolve, and that's one of the neat things about high school coaching is you don't ever have the same team year after year. You probably can't use the same system. So when you talk about, by golly, I'm going to press the whole time and play man-to-man defense and run the flex offense, you can't do that as a high school coach, which makes high school coaching ultimately, I think, maybe the most difficult place to coach because we can't recruit. Well, I mean, most of us can't recruit.
Right.
Most of us can't recruit to what you want to do as a coach. So you're really expanding yourself as a coach, knowledge-wise. You really work at it. And, I look back on those first 2 years at Lone Tree High School, and, man, we weren't very good, but what a great learning experience. I mean, those kids and those parents were just happy to have somebody who really cared about the game of basketball. And that really helped me evolve as a coach. I think I think building relationships is most important, and I'm not so sure kids have changed that much. I think society has changed some, obviously over the years, but I'm not so sure. Kids still want to be coached. I think kids still want to win. Kids still want to play well. They want to look up to somebody. They want a mentor. They want some discipline in their lives. They want somebody to really be not only a coach to them, but somebody who they can look up to. I don't think those parts have changed that much throughout the years. What I think has changed, obviously, social media has added another element to the whole mix throughout the years. I think parents have gotten more difficult to work with. I think there's more pressure on coaches these days from the parent standpoint. The travel teams have brought another, back in 15 years ago there weren't really that many travel teams that took a big picture from the basketball world. But so those things have changed, made basketball change a little bit, but just the basis of the individual, I think they're still looking for the same kind of, still enjoy the same kind of person coaching them as they did 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, for sure. I think you're right on that. Just in terms of what kids are looking for, I think the system around them, maybe around basketball, is different than it was, again, say 15, 20 years ago. But I do think, as you said, that players are still looking for some of the same things from their coaches that they were looking for back in the time when you might have been playing or I might have been playing. It still is about the relationship that you're able to build. That player-coach relationship, I think, is so important. So I would ask you, if you were to look back on a relationship that you had with a player, and just a generic player, what would you want them to have, or what do you think they would say that they took away from being a player on your team, besides obviously the basketball skills and the things that you're teaching them? What were some of the things that you wanted to impart to the young men that you had on your teams that was beyond basketball?
Well, I think there's a couple things. First of all, I think players would say that I really cared about them as a coach, and I really cared about them off the court. I think it's hard to coach players until they know you really care about them. I'll go back to my last job at Iowa City High. It was an extremely diverse school. They had a great athletic program, except their boys basketball program was struggling. And so I told the administration it was going to take at least 3 years to turn that program around. And what I did was, to turn that program around, I started out with making home visits to every player on our varsity team, going in and meeting them, meeting their parents, letting them know my philosophy, and letting them know I really cared about their son. I think that was the start of some really good relationships. So I think caring is really one. I think the second thing is trust. What you say as a coach, you had better follow through on. I'll just give you an example that, even an example like, let's say you're shooting free throws and you say, coach says, all right, I'm going to give the winner, whoever wins the free throws is going to get a pair of socks. Players love socks for some reason. They love socks.
True.
And as a coach, you make that statement, but you never follow through with it. They don't forget that. And so the trust factor, all of a sudden you're saying, yeah, I'll give you a pair of socks for winning the free throw, and then you make an excuse and don't do it. All of a sudden that player thinks, you know what, I'm not sure I really trust what he says. And it doesn't take very much. So the care and the trust, I think, are the two most important things that a coach-player relationship can have. And I've had some really difficult athletes to work with who are really talented, It's amazing because 10 years later, their parents or them will come back and say, had we not had you as a coach, we're not sure where our son would be. And he's turned out to be really a great dad, a great husband. So those are the kind of things that you really embellish as a coach.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I think if you could have all your players walk away with knowing that you had their best interest at heart and that you had an impact on them, that it not just impacted them on the basketball floor, but it impacted them in their future life. I know that one of the things we've talked to some other coaches about is the fact that sometimes the things that you say and do, you don't necessarily see that impact 5 minutes later. Sometimes you don't see that impact for 20 years or 30 years. And players come back, or players are thinking about some of the lessons that you taught them, and now they're 40 years old or they're 45 years old, and they're still drawing on that wisdom that you as a coach passed on to them. And I think that's one of the things that, if you're a young coach out there or you're an older coach that's out there listening, just to remember the impact that you have on kids. And it can be something, like you said, something as small as you were supposed to deliver some game-winning socks and you didn't. And, that's something that kids remember. And they remember it in a positive way and they remember it in a negative way. And I think if we can all just understand the impact that we have the opportunity to have on kids, the coaching profession is going to be so much better off.
Yeah, I know as a young coach, those things were, I think they were evident to me, but I didn't really know how much those attributes were part of being a great coach. Caring and trusting and making yourself available to players during hardship times, even after they graduated a lot of times.
Yeah, I think sometimes that's when some of the most gratifying conversations that I've ever had as a coach come after the players are gone, and they come back to you and they pick up the phone, and there's nothing better than hearing a voice on the other line say, "Hey coach, I want to tell you about this," or "Hey coach, I need some advice about that." And I think that really tells you that you had an impact on their life in more ways than just teaching them how to have good form on a jump shot. And that to me is something that's really, really important. I want to go back to something you said with talking about the home visits and going in and meeting with families and meeting with parents. If you had one or two pieces of advice for a basketball parent, so if a parent is out there listening and they have a child whose kid is maybe going into high school or is currently in high school, what are a couple pieces of advice that you would give to parents to make the experience better for their kid and also for them?
Well, yeah, that's a great point. I'll go back to when my dad passed away several years ago, but I'll go back when I was growing up as an athlete. Not once did he ever criticize the coach. Not once did he ever criticize me. Not once did he ever criticize my teammates. He loved to watch me play. He loved to go to games, and but he never interfered with. He never told me, "Hey, you got to go out and shoot 200 shots." He never told me that you're playing out of position. How come the coach is playing you out of position? And so I go back to that, and I think that's why I love the game so much. I could just go play without having going home and hearing my dad or mom criticize or be negative about my teammates, about my coaches, about me. And so I think I developed a real love for the game. I can't imagine that some kids can love the game when they go hear the negativism that comes from a parent at home. Well, you should be playing more. How come you're not playing more? Type of thing. And so, I would tell parents the first thing you should do as a parent is say, hey, I enjoy watching you play. I think that's the best thing a parent can tell their son or daughter. I just enjoy watching you play. And I think the second thing is, did you have a good time? Did you have fun? Sports are supposed to be fun. And so I think those are the two things that parents should do all the time. Obviously they support, you want to support your son or daughter, but then let them, they got to learn adversity. You're too many times, I think that's changed a lot with parents, is that we don't want to see our son or daughter go through adversity, so we try and step in for them. I went through a lot of adversity, I think, as a player, but I don't remember my dad ever stepping in for me. That's one of those things that makes you grow up. You mature because of adversity. There are times I got benched for not. I remember a couple times I got benched for various things, and you know what? My dad never called a coach and wanted to know an explanation. He just said, you probably deserved it, and you fight your battle. And so I think those are things that parents really are short-changing their son or daughter, because at some point they're going to go through adversity. They're going to have to learn how to make it through some tough times and what to do with it. And if their parents always stepping in, they're not going to learn how to do that.
Do you think that's contributed to the high transfer rate in Division I college basketball? I know it's trickled down in a lot of cases. You mentioned it earlier too, to even the high school ranks, that coaches are sometimes afraid to criticize their best players for fear that that player is going to leave. Do you think that traces back to what you just said with parenting? I kind of think it does.
Absolutely, no question. No question. If what's that? They may hear it from their parent. What's the coach telling you? He's telling you, is he telling you not to shoot, or you should be shooting more? How come you're not scoring 20 points a game instead of 14 or whatever? So there's no question. I think that has a lot to do with kids transferring, going to different high schools. I mean, there was a great high school player, just graduated a couple years, and now he's not playing basketball, but he went to 4 high schools in 4 years. So how can you tell me you're going through some learning how to deal with adversity if you just transfer?
Right, for sure. You're not, and again, we all know that that's not a realistic life lesson for anybody to learn, that you just walk away when things get tough. And it's unfortunate that a lot of parents are setting their kids up for not being prepared for that when they get to real life. And again, we want to use sports and basketball to be able to not only teach kids the game, but also teach them to be able to function better in their life. And I think that parents sometimes miss out on the idea that, hey, it's not always going to be easy, and there are times where things aren't going to go your way, and you have to be able to fight through that. And eventually, if you do fight through it, and we talked about it earlier, that if you work hard and you go that extra mile, that eventually things tend to turn out the best for people who look on the bright side and work hard and do all those things. And so I think it would be, if parents could hear what you just said and take that to heart and really try to look at the way that they're parenting and the way that they're dealing with their child and their sports experience, I think we'd all be a lot better off, because I find that people get so caught up in the moment of what their kid's doing and where they think their kid's going to go and how talented they think their kid is, that a lot of times they lose sight of the bigger picture. And one of the things that I like to say, and I think it relates to your experiences coaching the best of the best in high school, is that even if your kid gets to that level, which, let's face it, the vast majority of youth sports parents' kids are not going to be Division I athletes. They're certainly not going to be NBA players. But let's say even if they are, wouldn't you want your kid to be a great person as an NBA player in addition to being a great basketball player. And I think that's something that parents really have to realize.
Absolutely. I mean, I was a parent as well. I had a son and daughter that grew up both of them playing sports, and I coached my son in high school. We had a great relationship while I was coaching him, which not always happens with a father-son coaching duo, but we were very fortunate to have that. So I know what parents are going through, and you want the best for your son or daughter, but the best many times is not you helping them. Sometimes they got to help themselves and figure out how to deal with different things and how to deal with people.
For sure. Let's change gears and head into one last category here, and let's talk a little bit about your current role with Snow Valley, because now, since I've gotten an opportunity to talk with Greg White, and we're going to talk to some other guys who have had been able to attend, as a coach and get involved in that. Everybody's had just tremendous things to say about Snow Valley. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about again, you talked a little bit about how you got involved in it, but talk a little bit about where it is today and what makes it such a special place.
Well, Herb Livesey, actually Snow Valley started over 50 years ago by a coach by the name of Herb Livesey, who at that time was just out of college and had worked Bob Cousy's camp. And for those of you who have no clue who Bob Cousy is, he was probably one of the best guards ever, played for the Boston Celtics. So
Holy Cross.
That's right. It's very good. I'm impressed.
I'm on that one. There we go. I got some basketball historian in me.
There you go.
He also listens to Bill Simmons, who talks about Holy Cross all the time. So
absolutely, there you go. Bill does a lot. Yep. So Herb actually, as a 22 or 23-year-old young man, Bob Cousy told him that he would be a good person to own a camp, and so actually he bought the camp from Bob Cousy, and then moved it to California, and the location was in the camp in a campground type of atmosphere in the Snow Valley Mountains of San Bernardino. Therefore, the name Snow Valley. Having said that, then he moved it to Montecito at Westmont College in Montecito, Santa Barbara area. Soon after that, I started working the camp, loved the way it went, gained so much knowledge as a coach. It was really a coach's camp as well. Jerry Slykehouse, who was my partner in it, we both worked it, actually bought a franchise from Herb Livesey, moved our franchise. We thought it'd be a great Midwestern camp, moved it to Iowa, but I think we just completed our 26th year of Snow Valley, and that's kind of the way it started. Just in a nutshell, Snow Valley you're there for a week, and you, as a coach, it's like a coaching clinic, because you watch other coaches teach the game to the campers, and then you help out at baskets with what they teach. So, coach may be in charge of the defense. So as a coach working with the lead coach, I would watch him teach defense and how he implemented different drills and lead up drills. And so then we would go to baskets and we'd do what they wanted us to do at the baskets. And then they would bring us back together for the next progression. So you really got to learn how to progressively teach the game of basketball at Snow Valley Basketball School. And we would have some great teachers. Through the years, we've had NBA coaches, we've had major college coaches, we've had, great high school coaches, great junior high coaches work. So that's kind of what Snow Valley is. We have 4 sessions in Iowa at Wartburg College, which is a tremendous Division III facility. We have about 400 kids per session for 3 boys' weeks and 1 girls' session. And we've basically sold out every year for the past 15 or 20 years and have coaches from all over the world working camp. We have international coaches come every year from Europe, all over Europe, Asia, just to be a part of the camp. So we think it's really a teaching camp as well as a camp where players get better.
Right. So it's not only a camp for players; it's a camp for coaches as well.
Absolutely.
What do you the kids that attend typically, are those kids that are from the general local area, or are you getting kids that are coming from, I mean, I'm sure you get a few from far distances, but what's your geographic makeup in terms of the number of kids that you get coming in to attend camp?
Well, I mean, the first year we started, I coached at Mid Prairie High School. Jerry coached at Cedar Falls High School. We had 80 kids, and about half were from each of our schools. So, so that was the first year. And after that, I think until about 10 years ago, it was about 95% Iowa players. Over the last 10 years, we've gotten probably 20% of our players come from Wisconsin, Minnesota, surrounding states, as well as they fly in from California, Florida, all over the country, really. So it's become more of a national type of camp. And I will say that Sports Illustrated did an article many years ago on basketball camps and what was good about basketball camps. And at that time they said there were two camps that really developed skill and not just were for games or entertainment. And one of those was Snow Valley Basketball School. When that happened in Sports Illustrated, obviously that was tremendous for us. We certainly advertised with that in mind. The other camp was it was the old 5-star.
Old 5-star, right? Exactly. We talked about that. We talked about that before, and I'm just curious to get your perspective. You think now back to, and I attended 5-star when I was a kid, and I was there. My year that I graduated from high school was 1988. So the session when I was there, Billy Owens was the marquee guy.
Sure.
The time that I was there. But it's amazing to me that those top guys at that time, were playing outdoors on basically tennis courts with chain link fence around the around the courts. It's kind of amazing when you consider the opportunities that kids are getting, with you at USA Basketball versus what they were getting. And obviously you look at the roster of coaches that were at 5-star back in those days. I mean, it was a who's who of coaching. So it's kind of amazing that it just shows you it was a different time.
Yeah. And 5-star was very similar to Snow Valley. It was a teaching camp. They didn't play games. They played very few games. We play 1 game a day at night. All the rest of the time is spent in clinics. We get the kids up at 6 a.m. in the morning, and they have a session before breakfast. When we started, everybody said, "Oh, you're crazy. You'll never get kids to get up at 6 o'clock and have a skill session." Well, 26 years later and 1,600 kids per 1,600 kids per summer certainly indicates that there are kids that are going to do that.
For sure.
And 5-star was the same way.
Yep.
I worked 5-star for many years, and the same type of thing. Obviously, Howard Garfinkel set the stage there, who was a founder of 5-star basketball camps and has since passed away here recently. But he developed that style, and I became very close friends with him as well. So great camps. Snow Valley still. We're not going to change what we do. That's who we are, and there's not very many camps that do that, if any, that are really skill development camps. And we still have tremendous response from coaches and from players around the country to attend our camp.
Yeah, I think the camp model, that's one of the things that I do here, and I do it obviously on a much smaller scale with younger kids for the most part, but I think that that's a market that is sort of underserved because kids are playing so many games today, whether it's on the summer AAU circuit or whatever, the travel circuit. Kids are they're just playing more games, and there's not as much time spent in learning the fundamental skills. So I think it's an area that, again, is not necessarily being utilized to its fullest. So I'm really pleased whenever I have the opportunity to talk about, again, I talk to somebody who's doing a camp where they're actually teaching and doing the things that are going to help to grow the game and help kids get better, because so many kids are just spending so much time playing their games. I want to ask you one more thing related to Snow Valley. What do you think right now what's the biggest challenge to running a camp of that size? Like, what do you find in your day-to-day operations there that's the most challenging for you at this point?
Well, I mean, I think, believe it or not, I think the challenge is not necessarily getting kids to come to camp. I think the challenge is to, when the kids get there, to really instill the aspect of hard work and here's what you have to do to become a better player. Because you made a great point saying that most kids just want to play games. So you cannot convince me that a kid who plays games all summer is going to become a better shooter, because they just don't shoot enough. So I think one of the things we're always trying to do is implement a structure where we really keep the fundamentals, that we're still working on the fundamentals at a high level, kind of instilling the fact that kids play too many games, letting them know that it's not all about playing games, because their games are never going to get any better unless they get better, type of thing. Then obviously now you have to be concerned when you're running an overnight camp like we are, with the safety. We have to have coaches. All our coaches have a USA Basketball license, which includes background checks. So those things are really, really very important, and you didn't have to worry about that 10 years ago. Now you have to be really concerned with those type of things as well, safety factors that enter into it. So that's just some of the information that we try and deal with on a daily basis when we have camps.
Absolutely, Coach. This has been a pleasure. Is there anything that we have not hit on that you'd like to share before we give you an opportunity to let people know how they can get in touch with you? Is there anything that we didn't cover that you think is relevant that you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, I tell you, I've been on a lot of podcasts, but I think you might be the most thorough one I've ever been on.
I appreciate that. We appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, it's been great talking coaching. The coaching profession as coaches listen, I think we find out there's a lot of coaches that have been coaching 0 to 5 years, and then there's a lot of coaches who've been coaching 15 years or more. But it's that coaching length between 5 and 15 where coaches drop out of coaching because they, family time commitments, parents, all that kind of stuff. So, really, I have a lot of respect for coaches, being a coach myself, but even more so these days for guys who are really committed to making a difference in kids' lives from the coaching standpoint.
Well, we certainly feel and appreciate you and the things that you're doing. Again, Coach Jason and I, we love the game of basketball. It's been a huge part of my life, and it continues to be. And when I hear the stories that you were able to share and relate tonight, again, it just inspires me to want to be better. So thank you. If you wouldn't mind, please let us, could you share with our audience the ways that people can get in touch with you if they want to reach out with questions or just to say hello?
Yeah, absolutely. Being working full time now with USA Basketball, I get a lot of questions about. We run regional camps with USA Basketball. We have coaching academies. We have a lot of events going on. Coaches always want to be a part of USA Basketball as well. So my email address is simply D Showalter. That's DSHOWALTER at usabasketball.com. And you can always email me, and I guarantee I get back to anybody who emails me. I respond to within 24 to 48 hours. So I certainly welcome any comments that coaches may have, and if I can help in any way, that's what I'm here for.
Fantastic. Coach, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. We thank you for giving up an evening of your time to jump on with us. And to everyone out there who's listening, we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks. Head Start Basketball's Player Development Academy offers Cleveland area players a unique opportunity to improve their basketball skills. Regardless of a player's age, skill level, or position, training with Head Start Basketball will elevate your game to the next level. Do you want to improve your ball handling, become a better shooter, or develop into a more skilled, confident player? Our Academy classes offer training that's designed to do just that. Our training sessions are innovative and will have you learning skills that are transferable to actual games. We have 4 different class skill levels for boys and girls, ages 4 and up. All Player Development Academy classes will be held at the Strongsville Recreation Center. For more information or to get registered, please visit www.headstartbasketball.com. Thanks for listening to the Hoop Heads podcast, brought to you by Head Start Basketball.